There's no place like it, and it's where the heart is. Yep, I'm talking about the home. Welcome back to Hebrew Vocab Boost. I'm Sapir, and today I'm talking about the shoresh Bet Yod Tav, which is related to the word bayit, which means home or house. This is another shoresh like aleph mem mem that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, that basically, if it weren't for the compound words, there'd be hardly anything to talk about at all. But luckily for us, we do have a ton of compound words. Unfortunately, corpus searches of the Tanakh are nearly impossible, and for two reasons. The first one is that the word bat, meaning daughter, incorporates the first and the last letter of the shoresh we're searching, and the middle letter is one that it tends to ignore the fact that it's not there, because it's a letter that does go missing a lot from words in the Tanakh. And so I got a lot of results back that were the word bat. And the second reason is that bet is a really common prefix. And so I got just a ton of completely unrelated words that didn't even have a bet in their shoresh. They were just, there was a bet and then there was a tav somewhere later on in the word. I'm sure if I were better at searching through this corpus, I would be able to work through that, but I'm not, and so I just had to basically ignore all of the results. But I did get to thinking, in biblical times, at least in the first 5 books, everybody was living in tents, not in houses. So I thought maybe I could find at least the first instance of the word bayit, meaning house. I didn't have to go far. I found it in Genesis 7:1. And this verse says, Vayomar Hashem leNoach, bo ata ve'kol betcha el hateva, ki otcha ra'iti tzadik lefanai bador hazeh. The JPS translates this verse as, Then Hashem said to Noah, Go into the ark with all your household, for you alone I have found righteous before me in this generation. So the word in question is beitcha. It's the word bayit plus the pronominal ending cha, meaning your house. So it gets translated as a household, not a house. And it's talking just about all of the people who live with him, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. So that first instance of bayit in the Tanakh, it's more talking about the home, what makes a house a home, which is kind of the family that's inside. And in modern times, bayit can mean a house, just any old house, or it can mean a home, your own home, or somebody's home. And it still can carry that meaning of a household. I'm going to come back to the noun bayit because I've got 2 verbs and an adjective that I want to kind of get out of the way before getting into the meat of all of these compound nouns. The first verb is a PL verb, levayet, meaning to tame or domesticate. Now, it has an oddity, but it's not what you think. You're probably thinking, oh, that yod is going to cause problems. But the yod is not the problem child. This yod is a full consonant yod. So it sounds like a Y, and it has all of its consonantal properties. It gets a vowel underneath it. And because of this, it actually is not the problem child. So because it is a consonantal yod, it is doubled in every instance where it is written without nikud, which should be always. In other binyanim, such as pa'al and hif'il and nif'al, a yod in the middle position of the shoresh would definitely cause problems, but not PL or hitpa'al. And these are the only 2 binyanim that the shoresh Bet Yod Tav has verbs in those binyanim. The actual problem child is the taf at the end. It only causes problems with the past tense, and that's because past tense has suffixes that start with a taf. And so when you have a shoresh that ends with a taf, trying to match up with a suffix that starts with a taf, they blend together into one taf. So if we remember our past tense endings, it's just first and second person singular and second person plural that have suffixes that start with taf. If we look at the verb that means to pay, we have shilamti for I paid, and then shilamta and shilamt for you singular paid, and then shilamtem and shilamten for you plural. So if I'm understanding Payalim.com's transliteration correctly, these would be beatati, beatata, beatit, beatitem, and beatiten. The others, biet, bieta, biatnu, and bietu, have no taf in the suffix, so they are completely regular. In the present tense, the taf suffix for the feminine singular does indeed get spelled with a second taf. So that's what would be expected. And the future tense doesn't have any suffixes that start with taf. So everything's regular there. Just don't forget to write everything with 2 yods. Also, please notice that in most of the forms, the bet does not have a dagesh. So it sounds like a V and not like a B. This is in accordance with the regular templates of PL verbs. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. I think it just maybe sounds a little weird to our non-native ears because we know that it's related to the word bayit, and so we want it to be like le bayet, but it's not. It's levayet, mevayet, and avayet. It's just the past tense. Beatati, beatata. That one's going to have a hard B sound because it has the hardening dagesh because it's the first letter of the word. All right, there's also a hitpa'el verb, lehitbayet. And this one has 2 meanings. One of them is to become domesticated or to become tame. And the other one is said of a missile that homes in on its target. So like to home in on something. And the hitpa'el verbs have all the same issues that the PL verb had. It has the doubled yod because the yod has the consonant form rather than a vowel form. And then it also has this issue with the tafs right before a taf suffix that they blend together in the past tense. The only difference is that the bet stays like a bet. It has a dagesh in it, and that's typical of hitpa'el verbs. All right, there's also an adjective, which is beiti in the masculine, beitit in the feminine, and it means homey or domestic. All right, let's get to the good stuff. All these compound words made with the word bayit. There are so many of them. But first, let's go through the 4 forms of the word bayit. Regular nouns that are only one gender have generally 4 forms. They have what I guess is called their absolute state, which is just basically the regular noun in its normal form. So bayit is the absolute singular form of this word that means house. And then, of course, most nouns also have a plural form. And then they all have a smichut form in the singular and smichut in the plural. And in English, we often call the smichut forms the construct form. So, of course, the regular form, the absolute singular form of the word that means house or home is bayit. And this word is a little bit odd because it ends with a taf, and so it looks like it should be a feminine word, but it is not. It's a masculine word. Then the other thing is that yod is a consonant. We know that because it has a vowel under it. It's ba and then yit, ba yit, 2 syllables. And normally when we write without nikud and we have a consonantal yod, we will make it into 2 yods, right? I was saying this just a few minutes ago. But in certain, I think, really short and really super common words, we don't actually do that. And so bayit is one of these words. Even when we write it without nikud, we write it with only one yud. Mayim is another word that's like that. We always write mayim just mem, yud, mem sofi. We never write two yuds. The plural is slightly irregular in that it loses its yod and it sounds like batim. It's not like bayitim, batim. Smichut is always a noun plus another noun. And so it's always the earlier noun that's going to get the smichut form. I always just thought of it as whatever that word is plus the word of. So when you see a smichut form of the word bayit, it's not going to mean just house, it's going to mean house of. So the smichut form of bayit is beit. And again, if you think of beit as just meaning house of, that's going to go a long way to understanding all of these compound words. And then the plural smichut form of bayit is batei. So instead of being batim, it's batei, with just a yud at the end rather than a yud and a mem sofi. All right, let's start by looking at some really common compound words made with the word bayit. And the first set, we're going to talk about words that start with bayit. And so, of course, it's going to have its smichut form, beit. And these are all words that I have seen and often heard in the wild. So first we have Bet HaMikdash, and this means the Holy Temple. And in Judaism, of course, we had two temples, and they were both destroyed. So we have Bet HaMikdash HaRishon and Bet HaMikdash HaSheni, the first temple and the second temple. But this idea of the two temples and the time period that surrounded when Judaism was in its first temple period and its second temple period, this idea is so strong in Judaism that you will often see them written as Habayit HaRishon and Habayit HaSheni. This literally just means the first house and the second house. So other words that I commonly hear are Beit Knesset, which is a synagogue. It literally means a house of gathering. Beit Sefer, which means school, and it's literally the house of book. Beit Din is a religious court. Beit Mishpat is the secular court. Beit Cholim is a hospital, literally a house of sick people. And Beit Avot, spelled with an aleph and a taf, is a retirement home. Kind of like, it's like a house of fathers. There's another Beit Avot, I'll talk about it in a little bit. It's spelled really differently and has a really different meaning. There's also Beit Malon, which is a hotel. So Beit Malon means hotel, but it's often also shortened to Malon. Beit Merkachat is a pharmacy. Beit Cafe is a cafe or a coffee shop. And Beit Kolnoa is a movie theater. And I often, again, just like Malon, I often hear it just referred to as Kolnoa. Beit Hotzet Laor is a publishing house. I want to pause here and mention that if you ever are using any of these words and you want to say that there's more than one of them, you're going to use the plural of the word bayit, and you're going to leave the other word alone. So if you have one school, it's Beit Sefer. If you have many schools, it's going to be Batei Sefer. All right, moving on. So the rest of these words, some of them I've heard of, but they're not as common. The vast majority were in the academia, but I found a couple also in pealim.com. All right, so because bayit means house, a lot of these words have the meaning of like a building or a place where things happen. So we're going to start first with all of these words that mean some kind of building. So we have Beit Gnazim, which means an archive. And this one's actually not quite so common. Mostly they use, I think, a word that came from Yiddish, and it's archion. Beit Dufus is a printing house. Beit Du Koma, this is a really interesting word. This is a 2-story, 2-family house. Like a duplex. It said, in French, they call this duplex. Bet Va'ad. A Va'ad is a committee, a group of people who are discussing things. So Bet Va'ad is like a clubhouse or something like that where people go to meet and discuss things. Bet Yotzer is a pottery workshop, and it has come to have a figurative meaning as any place or setting that is conducive to creativity. Bet Yireh is any non-Jewish place of worship. Beit Kavod is a euphemism for the bathroom. Kavod means like honor or respect. So the house of honor. Beit Mal'acha is an artisan's workshop. Mal'ach is like it can be an angel. I'm sure you've heard it mean an angel, but it's also like a craftsman or an artisan. Beit Mitbachayim is a slaughtering house for animals. Beit Zikuk is a refinery. Beit Ma'atzar is a place where suspected criminals are kept before and during their trial. So it's a different place than the prison that they might end up in if they are convicted. Beit Sohar and Beit Kele both mean prison. Now this is the place that once you're convicted, that's where you're going. All right, we've got 3 words that mean brothel. We have Beit Boshet, Beit Zonot, and Beit Kalon. And you might think, well, in the United States, when are we ever going to use that word? But I live in Nevada, so there are brothels kind of everywhere. All right, and then we have 5 words here that all mean cemetery or graveyard. So we have Beit Chaim, Beit Moed Lechol Chai. There's also Beit Almin, Beit Olam, and Beit Kvarot. Kever means a grave, and so this is like the house of graves, right? It's the place where graves are. And another word that refers to a place, but definitely not a building, is Beit Gidul, which is a habitat. And Beit Avot, remember we had Beit Avot with an Aleph and a Taf. Now we have Beit Avot with an Ayin and a Tet. And this one is a mortgage lending institution. For some reason, there seem to be 3 body parts using the word beit. So the first one, Beit Li'ah, is the pharynx. So this is like the part of your throat. It's kind of way deep back in there. Beit Chazeh, this seems to mean chest. And Beit Shechi is the armpit. The words you learn on Hebrew Vocab Boost. All right, and now there's also just like some really random words that start with beit. And one of them is Beit Gal'in, which is any fruit with a single pit rather than a bunch of seeds. So like an avocado or an olive. Beit Nura is a light socket, so where we screw the bulb in. And then Beit Kibul is the inside of a container for storing foods, specifically liquids. So when you have smichut with the word bayit, bayit doesn't always have to be the first one. It can also be the second element. So we're going to look at a few of those. And let's remember, if it's the last element, it's going to have its regular form, no smichut form. And that makes sense because now we're not saying house of something, we're saying something of the house. And so that something gets its smichut form. So there are a couple I've heard in the wild. Ba'al Bait or Ba'alat Bait is a landlord or a landlady, right? You might know Ba'al as meaning husband, but it also means owner. So Ba'al Bait would be the owner of a house, and so it's the landlord. Shi'urei Bait is literally lessons of the house. In other words, homework. Now the rest of these I haven't really heard too much out in the wild, but they make sense. And so here they are. So M-Bait, I actually spoke about this just a couple weeks ago when I was doing Aleph Mem Mem. It is a woman who is in charge of a place that has children, such as a boarding school or an orphanage. So em bayit, it literally means mother of the house. Ben bayit is really different. It's a close friend who is at your house so much that it feels like you live together. Nevat bayit and akeret bayit both mean housewife. Meshek bayit is a household. There's also meshek bayit chad hori, which is a single parent household. So there's also a bunch of activities using this word bayit. So bedek bayit is a general upgrade to a house or an apartment. So it can also mean a thorough solution to a big social problem. So I think maybe it can be translated well as like an overhaul. Chanukat bayit is a house dedication. Most of us know the word Chanukah. It's a holiday in December where we light the menorah. It literally means dedication because we are celebrating the rededication of the temple after it was destroyed. Avodot meshek bayit is housework. We saw just meshek bayit means household, and avodot would be like tasks or chores. So this would be housework. Shidulat bayit means the activity of lobbying members of Knesset. And lastly, we have shlom bayit, which means household peace or family peace. Wow, that is a lot of compound nouns. Just remember that if you hear the word beit followed by another noun, and you haven't heard that term together before, you can try to piece it together. You won't always get it right, but trying and even failing are both a big part of the language learning process. So if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot bapa'am aba'ah. See you next time.